welcome back to the next episode of the Culture Eats Everything podcast. Get a chance to talk with Dan Cox today, who's a former teacher, principal, turned into school superintendent for 15 years in Illinois, grew up in Illinois, and super excited to talk to him today about burnout and how a lot of leaders, especially school superintendents, are facing burnout and the challenges of that. So thanks for joining us today, Dan.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
Absolutely. So let's start right in it and jump right into the subject. What do you see going on? What do you talk about some of the statistics you were sharing with me before we started?
Yeah, I think the superintendency, the way I would frame it, and to aspiring superintendents, I say it's the one of the most challenging jobs you'll ever have in your career, but also one of your most rewarding that you will have. And I had the opportunity to be a superintendent for 15 years, and really thought I would retire as a superintendent and do it for over 20 years. Over that time, I saw the job just get harder and harder, and really saw the roles and responsibility of the superintendent change. We didn't go from, when it first started, it was, make sure the budget's balanced and take care of all the managerial tasks. And then it evolved into being instructional leader with that, which is what a lot of us really loved. And then it became a piece where politics were involved and community health was involved, mental health was involved, teacher retention, teacher shortages, and it became a very um, difficult position, I think. When I started 15 years ago, the average tenure for a superintendency was 5 years. It has since shifted down to 3. Most recently, I think when I stepped away, it was 2.8 years. And I just heard yesterday that it's down to 2.5, but I haven't verified that.
Wow. Wow. And then share the stats about the Canadian, our counterparts to the north.
Yeah, I was talking with a colleague and a friend in Canada who works in the ed tech space, and she was telling me that her superintendents there average about 13 years in one spot. And she said here, working in the States has been a challenge because she can't develop the relationship with the superintendents, and she doesn't see the person in the chair long enough to have, an impact on the systemic change because they turn over. And she jokes, she goes, here in Canada, I know my superintendent's grandkids, and I just don't know how that change can take place and hold. And if you look at the research, it takes a superintendent about 8 years. They need to be in one spot for 8 years for systemic change to really take hold and see the effects of that.
So what's going on, Dan? What do you think is behind all this? What's the underlying root cause challenges here?
We talked about my dissertation. I'm an ABD. I have everything done but that dissertation. But in that work is the supports around our superintendents as not just instructional leaders, but leaders in general. And really, there are no supports in place for superintendents. And it's a two-way street. It's not just the system support and the school board supports, but it's also the things superintendents do for themselves as well. It's easy for your identity to be wrapped up on a job. You're on call 24/7. You're solving a lot of problems and a lot of issues. But likewise, there's no really standard evaluation process. Here in Illinois, I'm an Illinois career superintendent. We're the only educational group as superintendents in Illinois who aren't required to be evaluated. There's no mandated evaluation process to it, like the Performance Evaluation Reform Act deals with everybody but superintendents. But it's not just about evaluation. Coaching supports, mental health supports for superintendents. Right now, 1 in 5 superintendents are facing death threats, cyberbullying and stalking, and vandalism to their homes nationally. And that's a really tall order for superintendents to face. So I do believe we need to think about and have open discussions about how we can support, the leaders of the school systems.
Wow. Well, I didn't realize that. That's very alarming, and no surprise that superintendents are leaving in droves if that's the sort of lifestyle they're having to face. So as you think about your own decisions here to venture out and to do your own thing, what was behind that? How much of this burnout really got to you?
It's a just to be raw and vulnerable here, Tom. I mean, after reflection, a lot. I in my last year in the superintendency, um, In Illinois, we have 7 school board members, and I think when it was all said and done in that last year, there was 13 different school board members in 1 year alone. In my 5 years in my previous district, I had 20 school board members.
Wow.
So it's not just and the majority very very good people. So but the politics that affects the superintendency is also affecting the school board members, and the school board members are the key to the superintendent's success. So without, stability in the school board, it's very difficult to have stability in the superintendency. And go ahead, Tom.
No, you mentioned that that having support for the superintendents there, it's always been a lonely job, right? It's lonely at the top. That's we all know that whether you're a CEO or a superintendent, that it is a very lonely position, and that part of your proposal here is more support for them, more help. We actually started a group about 5 years ago that we thought we would do for about a year because then COVID would be over and we could go back to life as normal. But obviously that didn't work out as planned. But here we are 5 years, 6 years later, and we've actually got a few cohorts and we've got more people joining. And I think it's because a lot of what you're talking about, it's a safe space where the CEOs, where superintendents can come and just support each other and be real about their challenges that they're facing. And so, talk a little bit about more like what do you think superintendents specifically need? What kind of support like that do you think they need?
Some real support, guidance, and accountability on self-care and understanding in that. I think there's external supports, but there also has to be a willingness for internal supports. This summer alone, um, I've had the opportunity to speak at 2 amazing conferences. One was Stress Leaders here in Illinois, hosted by Dr. Dan Stecken, superintendent of Seneca High School District, and the other was Joy Jam in Indiana, hosted by Dr. George Philhauer. And both of these were on self-care, and the number of superintendents that attended was alarmingly low. We're really struggling to take care of ourselves and put other people first. I do think we have to get rid of the stigma of mental health and therapy with that. School boards need to understand the importance of that for their superintendents because they're in an isolated position. But superintendents have to be willing to talk about it because I think if they were, to be able to get help, whether it's coaching, whether it's therapy, whether it's mentoring, school boards would be supportive. But many of us are cut from that cloth that they hired me to deal with hard things and deal with problems, and I'm just going to plow through it. That's a start. I mean, it's not comprehensive, but it's certainly a start. I think the other thing that's really top of mind is to humanize the superintendency, and that's a two-way street. Oftentimes, we live in the communities we serve. Many of us are parents. We stay up late at night worrying about the best thing for the schools and the children we serve and the staff we serve. And we can be caught in political crossfires, a lightning rod. I used to have up in my office a picture of a tree being struck by lightning because that's what I felt like the superintendency was. You were just kind of alone in the middle of a field, and you were always that lightning rod. And I think just to step back and remember that we are people, we do have families, but we also have to be willing to, let down the persona. I always thought I was a pretty authentic person, but until I stepped away from the superintendency, it did not become clear to me how much I lived that superintendent persona 24/7, no matter where I was, even on vacation.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Yeah, I could say the same for myself. You definitely can put on some mask if you're not careful, and most of the time it's unconscious. You don't realize you're doing it, but whether it's the suit and tie or it's the behavior or how you carry yourself, all those are different versions of being a little less authentic maybe than we should be.
Well, what you said right there, Tom, a colleague of mine talked about that. He said he believes in dressing nice and looking nice and dressing the part and wore a suit and tie to school every day, and a rural school district superintendent. And somebody called him out on it. He's like, "I'm professional. I got to look the part." And he said, really, that was an armor. And that hit me because I believed in that as well. And I always thought, no, I'm dressing the part and I'm looking nice. I want to be a professional. And then I thought back, I was like, it's also a little bit of a shield. It's also a little bit of a separator. And I never looked at it that way till I was confronted with it. And, I had been doing it for a long time and consider myself a really reflective person.
Yeah, it's a shield, it's an armor, it's a badge of honor too that, look at me, I'm the superintendent, right?
Yeah.
So the self-care piece, I think we've heard so much about. We all get it intellectually. What's the challenge? Why are superintendents sort of historically been pretty bad at that?
One, you put a lot of people first. You put everybody else first but yourself. I think the other piece is really knowing who you are, and this goes for inside the superintendency and outside of it as well. Who are you? If you would have talked to me a year ago, I would have told you I'm a husband, I'm a brother, I'm a father, I'm a son, I'm a Christian, I'm an ultramarathon runner, I'm an endurance athlete, I'm all of these things, and I'm a superintendent of schools. It's who I am. It's what I do, but not who I am. And I realized that that was a lie to others and it was a lie to myself. And until I stepped away from the superintendency and that was pulled away from me, I'm like, I don't know who I am, right? And then I'm like, well, I'm still a dad and I'm still a husband, I'm still a father. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's still what I am. Because what happens if those things are taken away from me? And so then I had to do the reflection of saying, I'm a person who's led through adversity and come out stronger. I'm a person who loves his family fiercely. I'm a person who wants to help others grow and do more than they think they're capable, and learn through adversity. And once I learned that that's who I am, no matter what life throws at me, those things can't be taken away. The titles, no matter what they are, personally or professionally, can be taken away from you. And that was the aha moment for me where I feel like, okay, now I know who I am and how I'm called to serve other people and make an impact with other people.
Yeah, and sometimes I've had several, but sometimes you need those desert moments, I think, to really kind of die to self and to self-reflect and to really look in the mirror and see the reality around you. And I had that similar experience a couple of years ago when we wrote our book, The Great Engagement, and it got out and published and great success and all the fun things that happen when you write a book like that. But then I realized that, oh, that didn't really fulfill me either. All these degrees, these different roles I've had, these different titles, making more money, publishing a book, that at the end of the day, the big moment for me was realizing that in my case I was a child of God, that my faith was everything to me. And it was a hard moment, a hard few months for me, but it was also a huge gift because it allowed me to let go of a lot of the baggage I was carrying around and having to sort of prove myself to the world. And so for you, Dan, I'm curious, what advice would you give to maybe a superintendent who's out there who's just feels like they're grinding away and they're approaching burnout? What would you say they do in addition to the self-care stuff?
Um, Find your passion and your purpose. The finding joy in what you do as a discipline, it's a conscious effort, and realize that you're not entitled to be happy. You're not entitled to have a life free from adversity. Those things happen. In fact, you want them to, because without those things, you don't find joy. You don't find faith. Those are the things you need in your life. But look for the opportunities to grow in that and really know who you are. And I think with that becomes the clarity of what's important. With that comes the boundaries, that allows you to devote the things that are your time to what's most important for you, and it still takes care of itself. And last but not least is don't do it alone.
Mm.
The biggest mistake I made was I was either burnout and didn't know it, but truth is I really think I did know, but I was too stubborn or maybe even ego driven. I'm like, I've done hard things before, I can do this. They didn't hire me to be soft, they didn't hire me to be needy. I can plow through, and that can really get you. So make sure you find that passion and purpose. Let go of the things you can't control. Lean into your faith, family, and friends with vulnerability, and wait patiently.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. We've got a great article on our website about burnout and how there's actually several stages that occur before that. And if you can figure out what stage you're in, then you can figure out what to do about it. It starts with just being tired. And if you're tired, that's actually probably a good thing because it means you used your brain, you were active during the day and you need to get some sleep and some rest and some food to power up for tomorrow. And then if you keep going though, for too much of that, then you start to feel sort of fatigued. And that fatigue is okay too, because that's usually where a summer break can help, or an extended vacation or a long weekend can replenish you. But then if you do that for too long, it leads to exhaustion. And that's usually a pretty early indicator that you're headed towards burnout. And to be really careful and to really pour into yourself and to take care of yourself. And you mentioned before we hit record here that the idea of taking a sabbatical can be a really powerful experience, right? So you want to talk a little bit about that?
You know, I just looked at everything differently. Once I was out of the superintendency, it took about 3 months probably. And to be able to have that opportunity to step away and really self-reflect and work and do some hard work and intentional work, I didn't realize how valuable that was, but how much I never took time to invest in myself or slow down. It would be great if somehow superintendents could take a sabbatical, or if they could take, really, you can't take 3 months or 6 months. I don't know if that would be capable, but many have people that are very, very capable and able to keep the ship afloat while they're out. Maybe it's a week, maybe it's a month, maybe it's 3 months. I don't know. But being able to step away and turn off the email, turn off the noise, turn off all the demands, and just really reflect would be amazing. And that again starts with you. I haven't met a school board yet that said, hey, when you're on vacation, don't check your emails. They've all said it, whether they mean it or not, I don't know. That's probably individual school board and culture. But most of us never follow through. So it's a two-way street. We have to be part of that solution. We are the solution. That's why I said focus on what you can control, and then the outside dynamics do balance out.
Yeah, focus on it and then actually do it, actually execute it. I think that's the hard part is to whatever sabbatical you can take, if it's 3 months or a month or 2 weeks or a week, but to have the mindset that this is a sabbatical where I'm literally going to go to work on not working, where I'm going to go to work on becoming more self-aware, on becoming more um, just that aware of like the life I'm living and sort of check out from it for a little bit. And so I think for leaders out there, that discipline of just slowing down can be so powerful because if we can slow down, we can actually be much more effective, much more efficient, and bring the team together to accomplish so much more if we really do take care of ourselves first. So we're almost out of time here. So I guess let's wrap up with just your final thoughts on the subject and any parting advice for the listeners out there.
Don't make it hard. Um, you know, it's not complicated, and just start with something. It can be, we mentioned a sabbatical, it could be a mini sabbatical. I started a practice at the advice of a really good board president one time when she noticed I was extra edgy and grouchy at school board meetings. And when I described the length of that day and the stress of that day, she said, you love running. Why don't you take off at 2 o'clock on board meeting days and go for a run and just take a break so you're refreshed and ready to come back? And I was worried about what the board would think, what the community would think if they saw that I was gone and out on the trail or something like that. So she took care of that communication. And that's what I started doing. It was a practice before board meetings. I would take off a little early and go on a run, get showered up and come back. And it changed the entire evening for me. And that was, a form of a mini break that did wonders for me. So have the conversation with your board and your board president, and have the conversation with your family at home, and have the conversation with yourself, and do something about it. Like Tom, you said, I think that's the critical thing, is take some action for yourself and don't overcomplicate it.
Yeah, create an intentional plan to take care of yourself and then go actually do it. Have somebody help you to help keep you accountable for doing it, so you don't slip off the rails and
Yeah.
start checking emails at midnight, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we all
Do a
like we
phone
all get
fast.
sucked into. Well, thanks so much, Dan, for the time and for sharing so much about your own journey and being real and honest with our audience. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
You bet.